harvest.
Good afternoon, dear listeners. In Benin, Benin's Interior Minister Alassane Saido appeared on SRTB TV saying a small group of soldiers attempted the mutiny early Sunday. He confirmed the army remained loyal, regained control, and assured citizens that the situation is under control. Let's listen to him.
Petit matin de ce dimanche 7 décembre.
In the early morning of Sunday, December 7, 2025, a small group of soldiers initiated a mutiny aimed at destabilizing the state and its institutions. In response, the Beninese armed forces and their leadership, loyal to their oath, remained committed to the republic. Their intervention allowed them to maintain control of the situation and thwart the attempt. The government, therefore, urges the population to continue their daily activities as usual.
Normalement à leurs occupations.
Sudanese authorities report 79 dead, including 43 children and 38 injured after a drone attack on Kaluji, South Kordofan, carried out by the Rapid Support Forces militia. The state government strongly condemned the attack as terrible crimes. In a new development in Benin, around a dozen soldiers have been arrested for their involvement in the attempt coup, according to military sources. The Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo is once again sliding into chaos, with thousands of people fleeing amid intense fighting a few days after the peace deal with Rwanda. At least 13 farmers have been kidnapped in northeastern Nigeria, according to local government officials. Now moving to economy, Algiers is witnessing a surge of activity today as the second day of the African Startup Conference gets underway, bringing together ministers, experts and innovators from across the continent. High-level meetings chaired by Algeria's ministers of telecommunication and knowledge economy has set the tone for a day focused on concrete policy coordination, from digital infrastructure to tax incentives and research funding. Our report on field Emmanuel shares more insights. Hello Iman, how is the conference unfolded today?
Hello Amira, and greetings to you all our listeners. I'm joining you, once again from Algiers on the second day of the African Startup Conference, where momentum has clearly intensified. The halls of the CIC are buzzing as delegates move from board vision to practical steps aimed at strengthening Africa's innovation landscape. The morning began with two key ministerial meetings. The first one, chaired by the Minister of Telecommunication, Sid Ali Zarroqi, underscored the central role of digital infrastructure in driving Africa's technological growth, as he highlighted Algeria's ongoing expansion of advanced network and called for greater continental coordination to support AI, fintech and other emerging sectors that depend on strong connectivity. He also talked about the Algiers declaration that would be implemented later on the AU session in the beginning of the new year. Meanwhile, the Minister of Knowledge Economy, Startups and Micro Enterprises, Noordin Wadah, led discussions that resulted in consensus on two major priorities. The first one is adopting the most successful government experiences across Africa as shared models. The second one is advancing tax incentives and reinforcing search funding mechanism to boost competitiveness and empower young innovators. Delegates closed the session with exchange on best practices and policy harmonization. Now let's turn to the afternoon, where experts, investors and policymakers gathered in a focused working groups to explore solutions to persistent barriers facing African startups, particularly financing, market access, and conditions needed for scalable cross-border growth. It's worth recalling that during yesterday's opening ceremony, President Tebboune, through a message delivered by Prime Minister Sifi Gharieb, called for transforming this conference into a continental bridge that propels African youth and startups onto the global stage. As deliberations continue into the evening, the goal remains clear for sure, and that is to shape coherent, actionable measures that can guide Africa towards a stronger, more interconnected startup ecosystem. That's all I have with me now, Amira. This is Emmanuel from the CIC, and back to you to the studios.
Thank you, Iman, for all these details. In a special interview with our reporter Iman Noued, AU Commission Vice President Salma Malika Haddadi highlighted the need for education regulatory reform and sustainable funding to strengthen Africa's entrepreneurial ecosystem. Let's listen.
I think that we need to invest in education and how we can look at promoting the skills of our youth and our entrepreneurs to provide a regulatory framework that gives space for the startups to grow and to prosper and to flourish, and how we can find or put together mechanisms for funding and to provide the startups with the needed funds for them to be able to grow and to grow in a sustainable manner.
African ICT and digital economy ministers under the African Union have adopted the Algiers Declaration, seeking a unified continental stance to strengthen Africa's digital sovereignty, regulate global platforms, protect data, and promote responsible AI use. African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, Leratu Dorothy Matabudi, praised Algeria for uniting African countries on digital sovereignty. She highlighted the key meeting that established a common continental position and supported ICT ministers' effort to advance the AU agenda to 2063. Let's listen to her on the microphone of Asma Boulawad.
So today we just had a very pivotal meeting that got us to a point where we have an African view and an African position that we can begin to domesticate on the African continent. We are quite pleased as the African Union to lend support to the work that the African Telecommunications Union is advocating in this regard, and certainly the work that the ministers of ICT of the continent, led by our Honorable Minister here in Algeria, are continuing to advance, and look forward to convening all the ministers under our specialized technical committee of the African Union to really anchor this work in the African Union Agenda 2063 implementation plan.
The African Startup Conference showcases regional momentum as Algeria leads with bold investment plans that effectively contribute to not only Algerian innovation startups but also operates all across Africa. More details with Widad Alawa.
The African Startup Conference highlights strong continental success stories as delegations work on shared solutions to challenges such as financing, capital flows, and brain drain. With over 200 exhibitors and 2,500 visitors, the event positions Algiers as a Pan-African hub for networking, investment, and cross-border collaboration. Algeria is reinforcing this role through major funding initiatives, including President Tebboun's $1 billion under the name of African Fund for financing startups and young innovators. Furthermore, and a new investment fund announced during the 2025 Intra-African Trade Fair developed in partnership with the African Development Bank. Algeria's startup ecosystem has expanded from 200 startups in 2019 to more than 10,000 in 2025, aiming for 20,000 by 2029, ensuring its status as a leading gateway for African innovation. Through new financing mechanisms, deeper continental partnerships, and a growing commitment to support entrepreneurship, Algeria is signaling its ambition to serve as a regional catalyst where African ideas, talent, and technologies meet.
In health sector, the World Bank and the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization have allocated $2 billion over 5 years to strengthen immunization systems, primary healthcare, and vaccine manufacturing in Africa. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.